Good morning. It's time for our daily devotion, and I am so excited today to be able to begin the book of Romans with you. We'll be looking at the book of Romans for the next month or so, and it is such an awesome book. The book of Romans is where Paul, writing to the church at Rome, of course, lays out the basic tenets of our faith. So much of what we believe, what we practice, what we understand about God and His revealing Himself through Christ is found in the book of Romans. It is the foundational book of what we believe and practice as Christians. It has so much to do with what Martin Luther revolted and attempted to reform the church about salvation by grace and grace alone. In this book, we are going to see Paul talk about salvation. We're going to see him talk about sin. We're going to see him talk about the consequences of sin, the gift of God, faith, walking by faith, grace, our relationship to the old law, our relationship to Christ, and what that means to us in the way that we walk. Romans 5 and 6 and Romans 8 are such wonderful passages of Scripture. So I'm excited. This morning, I want to just talk to you a moment about chapter 1. And in this chapter, we see two themes emerge. One is how God is a holy God. He is a righteous God, and how He deals with sin because He is righteous. How He judges sin because He is righteous, and God's intolerance for sin, and the fact that sin demands judgment. That's the one part of what we see in this chapter. The other part of what we see is that the gift of God, grace and mercy and salvation, can be the righteousness that God demands in us, not by our attaining that righteousness in our own effort, but by what Jesus did on the cross. He says in verse 17, well, let's start in 16. For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, then also to the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, but the righteous man shall live by faith. Then verse 18, for the wrath of God is revealed in heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them. So, here's what Paul's saying. On the one hand, there is unrighteousness in the world, and it is unrighteousness because people have deliberately chosen to sin, even though God has written it on their hearts what is right and what is wrong. And because people have decided and chosen to sin, there is judgment that must come, because God is a righteous God, and His righteousness demands the justice of dealing with sin. However, He's not only righteous, He's not only just, but He's also full of grace and mercy. And so through Jesus Christ, He made a way for us to obtain righteousness so that He would not have to judge us. He took out that judgment on Jesus on the cross. And because of the cross becomes the pivotal point of history. Because of the cross, we now have access, he'll say in chapter 5, into this grace in which we stand. So there is judgment for sin. God will judge sin. But the good news is He has made available to us righteousness so that we don't have to be judged for sin, and that righteousness comes through the gospel, and the gospel is about Jesus who died on the cross. That's the message of Romans. All through it, we'll be referring back to these two themes: judgment against unrighteousness and sin, and the grace and mercy of God, which allows us to know the righteousness of God through Christ Jesus. There's good news ahead for the next month as we look at Romans, and there's good news today. And the good news is because of Jesus, we stand righteous before the throne of God. We will no longer have the judgment taken out against us, because it was taken out on Jesus Christ on the cross. That's good news. Live in that good news today and make it a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.